barracks would have really done it this time. If we don't get to him first, someone else will. If it's not already too late. Wait. Darkness. It's close. I feel it, but it's different somehow.
Not only a traitor, but a thief. Now where is it?
Safe from you. Yes. Barrett should be just up ahead. Hey, that's where Barrett's signal is coming from. I'm picking up more chatter on the Fallen's comms.
Others around Prudnia. The snake does not leave here alive. It will be done, Eric
Savior, hurry. You must free. Thanks, thanks. And now, you must hide.
Not so fast. We heard your message. Darkness walks among us. What do you mean?
There is no time. They are coming. Merix asks for your protection once more. My protection turns succeed. Merix.
That's the button.
Success. Merix is true.
They prove it. We expect answers.
Come to Merix and you will have them. But know that our work here has only just begun.
crash and error reporting for game developers. Click on the link in the video description and sign up for your free trial today.
Of all the next-gen launch titles, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War ranks among the best ways to see unique PS5 and Xbox Series X features with a clear benefit in how it plays. It's an often spectacular game regardless of which console you own, and developers Treyarch and Raven Software take us back to the 80s with the over-the-top set-piece design we've come to love from the series. Cold War doesn't disappoint, and the new consoles crank the action up by an extra notch by offering two new ways to play, a 120Hz mode and support for ray trace shadows. These are bullet points of the new console generation, of course, and I've got to say, have a huge impact. But both modes are taxing and affect PS5 and Series X to different degrees depending on which you choose. So to discuss how these two premium consoles compare and contrast, I've got my good friend and colleague, John Linneman. How's it going?
Oh, pretty good, Tom. How's it going with you?
Yeah, it's been a busy launch week for the next gen. I think we've all got our hands completely filled with games to cover, and this one's been kind of in the running for a little while now. Obviously a big release.
Yeah, I mean, while I was working on Dirt, you've been cranking in the background on this, but on the side, I've also been playing this in my free time on both Series X and PS5. I think it looks really, really good, so there's a lot to talk about. So where do you want to start?
Well, first we should say that we're not going to ignore the Series S, of course. We're going to cover that as well in this video. But yeah, we should start by saying that both the premium consoles, we'll call them Series X and PS5, are kind of feature matched, and Series S does not have the ray tracing and 120Hz toggle. That is only on the more advanced consoles. So I guess we'll start from the top, PS5 and Series X with the ray tracing mode enabled.
Which, by the way, let's specify this. There has been some confusion about this. I think when a lot of people see the words ray tracing, they think, oh, reflections. But there's so much more to ray tracing than that. And in this case, the developers opted to use ray traced shadows, which was also something available in last year's Call of Duty game. And I think we actually have a video on this coming up as well, which should be interesting, with Alex, of course, the ray tracing meister. Point is, though, is it basically allows for these very precise, very realistic, and very natural shadows. You know, you get perfect soft shadows, you get the sharper shadows at close contact hardening, all this kind of stuff. It looks really good. That is a solid mode indeed, all around. But I think the big draw for me, weirdly enough, is the 120Hz mode.
Right.
Now, I was actually surprised to see this included, and I think we should first note, there's a little bit of trickery to getting this to run on the PS5, from what I've seen. So obviously on Xbox, they do the logical thing, and you can adjust your settings from the system menu, right? You can choose 120Hz there, and, you know, just enable it in the game, I suppose. Super simple. On PS5, you actually have to go into the system settings and find the part where you choose your preference between performance or quality modes. This has nothing to do with the game specifically, it's literally just a preference thing. For some reason, similar to widescreen in Criterion games on PlayStation 2, where you actually had to set widescreen in the System OS, which is the only game that I know of that did that. You have to choose the performance mode here. When you do that and you go back into Call of Duty, and your TV supports 120Hz mode, you will get that mode. And if you go in the options, and this was especially confusing, it will still be grayed out, but it'll say enabled.
Which is weird, isn't it?
It's weird, but that's what it's doing, so that hopefully it helps some people with the confusion on how to enable that.
Yeah, if you're wondering why it's grayed out, go back a level to the system menus, and you'll be sorted. Yeah, I might prefer the Xbox approach when it comes to this stuff. You know, if we're doing it through the system menus, having it just labeled as 120Hz makes a lot more sense, but I think in future I'd much rather it in-game, you know, just so it's very clear. The functionality's there, and I think they're both even on that in that regard. You played campaign, right, with 120Hz?
I did. Again, I was surprised to see this in full campaign, because honestly, this is a beautiful game. I mean, for a launch Call of Duty, you know, we looked at Ghosts last gen. It's not a great looking game. Way to start the generation. This looks really good. Good materials, good effects, good post-processing. It's a really beautiful game on all platforms. And the 120Hz mode is actually super impressive and really solid. We'll get more to this in the performance, but whether you're playing it on Series X or PS5, you're going to have a really good time with this. If you have the display that can support it, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. There's obviously the resolution side of things, which we should touch on. No matter which way you play, the game looks awesome. It looks really well presented, and there's a reconstruction going on regardless of mode. But yes, on the PS5 and Series X, in the ray tracing mode, you've got a target of 4K, 1340 by 2160, but that can go down to 1800p. Though we have noticed like the horizontal axis kind of chops in half sometimes when things are really taxing, and that means you get kind of maybe a 1920 by 1800 at the lowest.
Yeah, it's interesting the way they do that sort of horizontal scaling.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty effective overall. The image quality in general is solid in this game.
Yeah, but this is like something we've seen in previous Treyarch games, I think, more typically.
That's true.
I can't say that we've really noticed an issue. I think there's temporal anti-aliasing to help it along and blend those frames, but yeah, it's not an issue.
Headsets on.
On the Series S, there is a 1440p max bounds, 2560 by 1440.
Okay, so that's hitting what Microsoft was talking about. That's good.
It's dynamic res as well, going down to 1200p on Series S, with a similar sort of cut to the horizontal axis independently. But yeah, that's a very typical Treyarch engine approach to dynamic res that we've seen in previous games.
Okay, so we have the resolution for the ray tracing mode, which is key, and then we also know how Series S is faring, which is pretty good. What about 120 hertz? Because I haven't actually pixel counted this myself, but looking at the screen, it does take a noticeable image quality hit, but not so much that I don't think it's still worth using. In fact, it looks a lot better than I would have expected for a 120 hertz game like this. So what did you get?
In the end, it comes to about 1200p typically. I've not recorded many results above that. It's very possible that so far it's like 1200p. And I've seen it drop to about 1080p, like in the meeting room. You know, you can work around temporal anti-aliasing to get a good lock on the resolution, and it's just a perfect stair-step match for a 1080p grid.
That's also true. That's worth pointing out. It's like it is really hard to pixel count these 120 hertz modes. At least in my setup, I can't capture 1440p or anything like that, so it has to be 1080p 120.
Yeah, same here. So it basically comes down to assessing a super sampled image, if you like. So if it's running above 1080p.
Yeah, which we've done before, and that is a little bit tricky, but it does give you an idea. Okay, so let's talk about the actual differences between the consoles then. From what I've seen going between them both, they seem to be pretty much identical.
Yeah, like Series X and PS5 really don't have much at all between them. There's a few like anomalies, I guess. Like you'll see ground textures positioned a little differently, you'll see grass distributed a little differently, but it's that usual thing of, okay, it might be randomized, there's not a clear lock on a absolute difference or advantage. It all leans on the resolution, which makes sense to me. I think it makes development a lot easier for them to lock on a matching feature set and then just work. You leave it up to the dynamic res to make sure the GPU doesn't buckle too much. On those two, there's not much between them. It's with Series S that things are definitely, the gap widens quite significantly.
That kind of makes sense then. So we have pretty high resolutions on the Series S, but so what kind of details? I haven't actually played it on here yet.
Well, the ray tracing is huge. We've gone into this, but it's such a difference. And not having that kind of makes levels look a bit bare in some ways, like just having these pre-baked shadows across terrain. It doesn't quite match up to it, but it's a very typical Call of Duty look for consoles. It's just something we saw like last gen quite often. So it does feel like the promise of Series S as the 1440p variant of the 4K experience on Series X isn't quite true here. It feels like it's just missing that feature, and to me that's a bit of a shame. And likewise for the 120Hz mode. There are a few other like small differences on Series S, like the grass density has dropped in some scenes, like the Vietnam level. You walk down this kind of route towards the helicopter, and it's there's some parts where there's a more visible cutback in detail, and also object motion blur looks to be using a different setting, at least on Series S. But overall, it holds together really well.
If you're looking for a side-by-side, you'll find the best deals and selection are found at Waterworld in Medford. We're well stocked with sports and utility models from Can-Am and Yamaha. We make owning easy with transparent deals. We offer outstanding loan options.
You'll find a great selection of accessories in stock and installation available. Drop by our dealership or give us a call at 541-826-5535. Open Tuesday through Saturday from 8:30 to 5:30 for your convenience at Waterworld in Bedford.
You're in the clear.
The game looks awesome on Series X and PS5, I'd say. But I guess the big question here then is performance. And I spent most of my time in the 120 mode, and I played through several missions on both systems and found them to be very smooth overall, with the exception of one scene, the helicopter, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
For most people, I guess 60 Hz is the way that they'll be playing for now, or the majority of people. There's been a few games coming out recently where it's been like a PS5 advantage in performance for whatever reason. But this game shows it Series X pulling quite a ways ahead in some points. We should qualify that 95% of the time, it's perfect 60. It's like that Call of Duty experience you'd expect in the ray tracing mode. If you want to polish that off, make it 100%, just turn the ray tracing off. But it works so well with ray tracing on, I really recommend leaving it there.
I kind of agree. Like, if you're actually getting a frame rate that's this stable, close to 60 most of the time, on both these machines with ray trace shadows, it's a really good sign for what's to come.
That's to say, when it does drop, and there are moments like in the set piece where you're kind of chasing this plane with the radio-controlled car, there's this massive drop on PS5, and it's not there on Series X if we switch to that. And there's another scene in Russia, there's this sort of complex, and you're running through it while being fired at, and PS5 drops to like 40 FPS, and it's not an issue at all on Series X. So there are set piece moments where it really obviously chunks on PS5. Not a big issue as soon as you turn and find people to shoot. It's regular gameplay, PS5 is absolutely fine, but there is selected moments where, that difference, it really shows Series X in a better light.
So basically then, with ray tracing on, they're both very stable. It's a little more stable on Series X, and if you play it without ray tracing, they're both pretty much like 99.9% stable. What about Series S then?
Series S, obviously no ray tracing. I found the drops are in very different spots. It's very good, 60 FPS, like again, the majority of the time. There's some small drops into the 50s during that kind of helicopter shootout where you're kind of panning across that village in Vietnam. And there's some other moments where, there's some tearing. There's adaptive VSync on every console, which means tearing is reduced along with the drops, but overall it does really well. It holds up very well. But obviously the load is very different. It's a very different tax on the system hardware.
I guess the good news, though, is if you're on Xbox again, I want to mention it here once more, if you have a variable refresh rate display, I can confirm that it takes care of dips. Although, in that case, I was testing the 120 mode, but I know that VRR also works beautifully in 60 Hz.
So, 120 Hz is the next big one, and I think this is where both of us feel a lot more excited. Obviously, you've got to have the right TV for it, and ideally HDMI 2.1 support on the TV to get the full range of the resolutions this game's pushing out above 1080p.
As you can see from the graph here, it actually runs extremely well overall, like really well overall. I didn't expect it to be as smooth as it is, and in fact, after like however many missions I went through, and I think you have footage here, is there's just that one part in the one mission with the helicopter where there's some dips, but otherwise I found that both consoles were really smooth. I actually played through all of this on both Xbox and PS5, and I found that on PS5 you could notice the tearing and slowdown at the beginning of the helicopter mission, and on Xbox I played it with VRR. I didn't actually really notice any of those issues, but then I looked at your data, and it tells an interesting story.
Yeah, because without VRR, well, we should say it's between 100 and 120 FPS, which, perceptibly isn't going to be a big difference. I think the metrics at the top there exaggerate in some sense, how extreme that feeling is. It's not 60 FPS, sub 60 FPS drops or anything. It's 120 down to 100. The strange thing is, we know ray tracing at 60 FPS works better on Series X, but as you can see here, PS5 takes the lead in the 120 Hz mode. No clear reason why this is. Like, the resolution bounds on both modes are, perceptibly the same. The feature set visually are the same. But yeah, PS5 seems to be, when it's pushed, really stressed in this set piece. It is the PS5 that takes the lead. And I've seen this a couple of times in multiple tests. But it's, again, worth stressing that a lot of the campaign runs perfectly at 120. And likewise, the multiplayer, which I've made a lot of, just feels so wonderfully optimized for 120 on both consoles. So it's, it's a complete non-issue, I think, especially if you've got VR enabled on Series X.
No, I mean, honestly, whatever drops occur on either machine, it's kind of negligible in the face of what you get. It's actually more stable than your usual Call of Duty campaign. I can't believe how well it hits 120 Hz on these machines. Again, it's just about every mission is basically perfect. So by and large, I mean, performance is good at this. I think the team did an excellent job all around. Frame rate targets are met most of the time. It feels really nice and polished on all machines. And I guess one thing we should also mention is that they take advantage of the DualSense controller. Specifically on PS5s, you actually get tension in the triggers, which I think is really interesting. I suspect that multiplayer folks are probably going to want to turn it off, because it does change the feel. I think it's really cool though for other modes. I would probably leave it on, because it's cool, but again, it does affect how fast you press the trigger, because what they do is, each trigger on a weapon is modified in such a way, so like pistol, when you pull the trigger, you'll feel tension right up until a certain point, and then it cuts in sudden force, you know what I mean? Like it gives way. It's really good.
There's kind of a pinch point.
Exactly, there's a pinch point. It's a good way to put it.
I noticed the difference when I went back to Series X. I'm like, oh, it's missing. That's how much I kind of end up missing it sometimes. But for multiplayer, I agree. It's like, I don't need it there. It's more of a fun-making campaign.
So I think that's pretty much it. We talked about performance, image quality. We've kind of gushed a little bit about the visuals. It is really a great looking game. I was really impressed with that as well. And the campaign itself, it has its flaws, but I find it was made by Raven Software, by the way, which is really interesting. Big fan of the classic works. But it has some stuff you don't usually see in Call of Duty, like some dialogue trees, like sneaking missions, and just kind of a different flow to it. So I kind of appreciate what they're trying to do there. But yeah, overall, it's a pretty solid package. It really looks great. It runs super well.
Loads of red barrels conveniently placed next to all the enemies, which I love.
Loads of red barrels, absolutely.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of it, and I think it's one of the most exciting games at launch for me. We went into this generation, expecting 120 Hz and ray tracing, even if it's not reflections. It's exciting to see, the fulfillment of that promise. All right, so that'll do for today then. Thank you so much, John, for joining me.
Of course, Tom. Anytime.
Treat yourself to a Black Friday deal. Find exclusive offers on Nest smart home devices and more. Treat yourself today at googlestore.com.
Look, if you came here because you heard we made great paninis, I don't know what to tell you. We don't make paninis. That doesn't even make any sense. Between Apple ditching them and AMD keeping up the pressure in the PC market, Intel hasn't had a great year, so they're understandably looking for any advantage they can muster. On Friday, they apparently thought they had found one, as they gave a briefing to journalists detailing a flaw in AMD's Ryzen 4000 series laptops.
Now.
Almost. Namely that when on battery power, AMD's chips don't ramp up to full strength until 8 to 10 seconds after certain heavy workloads begin. Now, Intel isn't wrong. This behavior is part of what makes AMD's latest laptops so great for battery life, at the expense of a bit of performance. But as Ars Technica and Extreme Tech point out, it's not the ace in the hole Intel might think it is, because first off, Intel modified their laptops to run at a higher TDP than the AMD models in their tests. They created specialized benchmarks, which they say reflect real-world usage, when this issue doesn't cause any problems for established tests, and this weighting behavior was an option AMD made available to laptop OEMs to maximize battery life. The issue here isn't that Intel doesn't have a point, it's just that having a press conference about it seems a bit desperate. Like, consumers don't want the strongest laptop. They just want one that's confident in who it is. That's true masculinity. Wait, what are we talking about? Let's talk about graphics card leaks, because the rate at which they are arriving has increased. Specifically ones about the RTX 3060 Ti, which NVIDIA still hasn't officially announced, even though leaks featuring the card have been popping up steadily over the past month. Now we even have pretty official looking slides of the card's specs, or at least Manly's version. There's a GPU company called Manly. Manly is the best. Anyways, this avalanche of leaks claim the cards will launch on December 2nd for $399, so get your wallets ready to not buy one, because shopping online is now off limits to humans. That's bot territory. We also got a couple leaks regarding AMD's unannounced RX 6700 and 6700 XT, which could both launch with 12 gigs of VRAM in early 2021, so don't worry, there'll be plenty more opportunities to spend some quality time at your computer hitting F5. That's refresh. And one of the downsides of Apple's new M1 Mac processor is the fact that it's a lot more complicated to emulate Windows on Mac OS. That's something that was pretty easy on Intel-based Macs thanks to Boot Camp, which isn't supported on the new ARM-based models. I can't believe Apple would do this! Those scoundrels! Well, Apple's Craig Federighi has said that Boot Camp could work just fine on M1 Macs. Microsoft just has to enable it on their side. Now, Craig's actually referring to Windows 10 on ARM, not x86 Windows. x86 apps can already be emulated using Crossover on Mac, and Parallels is working to bring support for M1. And currently, Microsoft doesn't license Windows 10 on ARM unless the OEM pre-installs it on the device. Ah! So it is up to Apple. They just have to pre-install Windows on the M1 Macs. And tricky, Craig. Me and James, we know business. Speaking of which, it's time for Quick Bits, brought to you by Vessi Footwear. They're known for making shoes that are light. I'm also wearing Vessi, you don't have to throw it at me! Ah! They're known for making shoes that are light, comfortable, and most importantly, waterproof, allowing you to walk in almost any terrain while keeping your feet as dry as the vacuum of space. Their Dymatex construction keeps your ground slappers cool in the summer and warm in the winter. And their practical everyday styling fits most occasions. Keep your feet dry for the cold, wet months to come. They've got a Black Friday sale right now, so don't miss out. But if you do, use our offer code TechLink to get $25 off each pair you buy at Vessi.com/TechLink. Is that the right slash? I never know. You haven't seen the Quick Bits I have. Phones leak too, not just graphics cards, in case you were wondering. It looks like Samsung might release their new flagship a bit early this year, with rumors pointing to January 14th as a release date. OnePlus 9 Pro is also getting some attention in the rumor mill, with leaks pointing to a curved screen, giant rear camera module, and a release date in March. But I don't know. I think I can hold on to my Pixel 3 till next September. Doing pretty good. Comcast has to extend its 1.2 terabyte data cap to all 39 states in which the company operates. It just has to. It's got no choice. It has to. Otherwise, people will abuse the system and clog the internet pipes with traffic. Even though multiple ISPs have said that the network handled the pandemic-fueled surge in internet activity just fine, and Comcast engineers have said that monthly data limits exist to generate revenue, not to manage congestion. We need these caps, guys! Snapchat has launched Spotlight, essentially a mini version of TikTok, inside the existing Snapchat app. But what's different about it, you might ask? Well, Snapchat is giving the top video creators a share of $1 million every day for the foreseeable future. I don't know. To me, that sounds way more fun and easy to use. Yeah, well, I guess we'll see. You gotta make apps, make videos first. The Solomon Islands, which are close to Australia, because I didn't know that, plans to ban Facebook due to widespread cyberbullying and people using fake identities. Never mind that Facebook was the place where official documents were leaked showing government spending on COVID. It's the cyberbullying. Okay, fine, it is a real problem. My mom comments on everything I post. Please stop. And in the latest example of that's too much money, a rare copy of Super Mario Bros. 3 has sold for $156,000 at auction. Apparently because it's a super early version of the game, and the word bros on the box is on the left side instead of the right. I need to go away now. Come back on Wednesday for more tech news. I'm sure we'll have something better for you by then. Yeah. Could have done a lot of other stuff.
King C Gillette is a complete line of tools and facial hair care products brought to you by Gillette. Carefully crafted for every guy who wants to look his best every day. Your beard is our trade. These are your tools. King C Gillette.
Yes.
Departure is warranted.
compromise this planet's crust. Must come from inside the defense policies. That's one fancy liver.
Knowing you, it won't look that way for long. Otherwise, it may be a challenge. Commander, I would consider you responsible. Perhaps they are conducting some sort of
Even their scientists are fools. you're right. Waterfall of Vex. No, it's that's me. Hey, Failsafe, you're all cozy in your data. Any advice on an energy shield?
I see. The nearby Vex constructs maintain that barrier.
Well, I could have. Okay, we'll shoot. Look at those drills. Even the Vex can't stop a Cabal invasion.
Survivors.
And of course, the drills have armed crews.
Especially suggestions. You can drop them first.
You know, they got stuck stealing from crews. Why didn't that happen to the Red Legion?
Calculating Red Legion similarity indicates 6.0001%.
You are both depressing and unhelpful. I think they want their crew back. I think it's lined up, right? It's switching guns. About modular mind neutralized. Well done. Wilson, what's your assessment of this incident?
Next records indicate the Cabal discovered the mine and got into this world to capture it. Had the Red Legions achieved their goals, I estimate a 60% chance this planetoid would have been destroyed in the ensuing battle. Luckily, the captain stepped in.
not be alone. You know this time. I do need to explain, but every time I try, I lose the thrill. Deep black is anything